Good morning, Armory. Nathan and I are out in the front yard. We're getting ready to do a little bit of yard work before the rain sets in today. And we're just hanging out, but we're really coming at you here with another Daily Dwell video for our devotions this morning. Don't eat dirt. Don't eat dirt. So yeah, we're looking at Matthew 26 is where we've now entered into, and Matthew 26 really begins it's the beginning of the end. Matthew 25 is kind of some of the final teachings of Jesus, and now a lot of it is story leading up to his crucifixion and then of course resurrection, which we'll be celebrating in about a week. So some really heavy stuff, a lot of important things that are going to be happening in the next few days as we're reading through together. But Jesus in the first 13 verses of Matthew 26, we have an interaction where we see the religious leaders who are plotting to kill Jesus. So a great way to start off the morning, right? Like this plot to kill Jesus, and they're gonna do it in after the feast, so it's not quite as public, so there's not going to be an uproar that they're arresting the people's prophet in the middle of the feast. And so I just found this a really striking contrast that was from when here the religious people, the religious leaders, the Pharisees, were plotting to murder Jesus. Okay, plotting to murder him, have him killed. In doing so, of course, they're planning to do it in secret. Going to do it at night. They're going to do it in all the ways that you shouldn't be doing that, out of fear and whatever else. And then you immediately go from that story to the story of when Mary Magdalene shows up, and she brings out a costly oil, and this flask of oil. And I didn't look up like how much that costs or whatever, like what the equivalent was. That's something I used to know, but it was very costly, worth quite a bit of money. And it says that the disciples were kind of upset that she broke this and used it to anoint Jesus's feet. They're like, could have given this to the poor. And then Jesus, if you've read it, Jesus actually commends her for this, saying that she was doing it in preparation for his burial. And so he sees it as this act of love, and that she'd be remembered for this. And so anyway, you've got these two completely opposite stories, where on one side there's somebody plotting to put Jesus to death in as private as a way as possible, so that not to arouse issues with the crowd. And then here we have this woman, disciple, follower of Jesus, who is coming very publicly in front of the 12 and in front of whoever else was there, very publicly to worship Jesus in this way, and to prepare him for the burial. And it was a striking difference to me to see those two approaches, one right after each other. And what I love about Mary's response is that it cost her. It was a costly effort, a costly act of worship. And the disciples, even, some of Jesus's followers, were like totally judging her for that. And a lot of the time we think of I think it's in Luke, maybe it's in John. I think it's in Luke though. I don't know. But it's when it specifically says that it was Judas who has the, the money pouch, who got all upset at her for this, saying like this could have been sold for a lot of money and given to the poor, and it was because he's the one that has control of the purse, the money. And so but here it is, like in Matthew, where Matthew, he's a tax collector, right? So he's one of the disciples. He goes ahead and just said it, like it was all of us. We were all thinking it. Maybe Judas was the one that spoke out, but they were all thinking it. And maybe it was just a jealousy thing, like how come we didn't think of that? Like, why didn't we do this for Jesus? I don't know what the reasoning was for their thinking along those lines. Maybe they were all jealous, or maybe they were all greedy like Judas. We don't know, but I just think there is that temptation as Christians to see these things that might seem like, hey, that effort or that money could have gone towards another need, or could have gone towards helping the poor or the homeless or whatever. And those things are good to do, and we should be doing those things. But if it's used to worship the Lord, if it's used to make much of Jesus's name, then we can't really give enough to that. And so, my thought for today, my question for today is going to be, what can we do today? What can we be doing in this COVID-19 time period that can worship the Lord, make much of his name, make much of Jesus, and do so even in a way that might turn some heads, that might have people going like, maybe you should have done this with that money, or maybe you should have done this with your time. But man, if it was used to worship the Lord and make much of his burial and resurrection, how are we going to do that? And so for Easter, fast approaching, the day that we get to truly celebrate him and truly worship him, and for all that the resurrection means, the death and resurrection means for us Christians, which is everything, we can't worship him enough. And so what's that going to look like for you and for me in the coming days? How can we make much of him and do so well, even if it's costly, even if it does turn some heads from onlookers? But also, how can we take care of those that are in need? I think that's been something throughout quite a few of the last things. It's not like Jesus is saying don't take care of the poor. Yesterday's parable was obviously telling us to do that too. So lots to think about in just a very short chunk of scripture here for today's reading. I'm curious to hear what you got out of it, so leave a comment, please, and let me know what the Lord's showing you. Want to be Mary Magdalene in that in today's reading. In that situation, how can we worship him and sacrifice to him in big ways, great ways, generous ways? Because nothing we do or give could ever be enough for all that he's given us. So that's what I'm going to dwell on the rest of the day. All right, hope you guys are doing well, and thanks so much for joining last night for the Zoom meeting for our game night. Already I've been thinking up ideas of what we're going to do for tomorrow's or for next week's game night. And oh my goodness, if it comes to fruition, it's going to be epic, something that I don't believe anybody has ever done. So I'm excited about it. Hope to see you guys tomorrow on, hope you join us for Sunday worship tomorrow, and then for Tuesday, our Zoom meeting for youth group, and then Friday for that game night. All right, I better take care of my kids because they're running around in the yard, and Nathan's barefoot, and he's going for it. So this is great. All right, hope you have a good rest of your day in quarantine.